Hi there. I hope you're doing well today. It's Dr. Carin here. Today is June 1st, and today's live is called What Dr. Carin Eats for Breakfast. So I'll be sharing a few of my favorite things to eat for breakfast around this time of the year, spring, summer, hopefully to give you some ideas of what you can have for breakfast as well. I think breakfast is one of those tricky meals, especially when you start talking about dietary modifications, like taking wheat out or dairy out. Breakfast is always one of those tricky meals. I think because in North America we have an idea of what breakfast should be. It tends to only include certain foods like milk or yogurt or breads and cereals. Egg and fruit. So if you have these limitations and then bring on food sensitivities and trying to remove those out of your diet on top of that, it gets pretty difficult to figure out what to eat for breakfast. And then there's also, of course, breakfast tends to be pretty rushed or on the go. So that gets a little bit pushed aside compared to, say, lunch and dinner. I know when I was in university, I would just swallow a couple vitamins with a cup of milk as I literally walked out the door. That was my breakfast. So I know that sometimes that can happen where there just isn't a lot of time for breakfast. And especially at this time right now where stores are opening up again and maybe some of us are going back into work, physically going back into work, that routine might be a little bit different and you might have a little bit of less time in the morning. So again, there might be a little bit of rushed breakfast happening. So hopefully we can give a little bit more ideas about what you can have for breakfast, broaden that idea a little bit, and make sure that we're eating what works for us and not necessarily what we're told to buy. So I can smell all the foods in front of me here and it's making my mouth water already. Of course, I'm going to show you my favorite foods, but of course it's based on my taste preference and my sensitivities. So most of these foods are dairy and egg free and low in gluten. You could definitely easily substitute it out to make it gluten free. So let's start with the first one. So the first one is more of a Japanese style breakfast. So let me show you over here. I'm going to get a little bit of rice in the bowl over here. Let's see if I can show you. Now, I often sub this out with quinoa instead of rice. I like the taste of quinoa, just plain. It's just quinoa cooked in water, no broth or anything added. But obviously, traditionally, Japanese rice, white rice here. And then that's all of the other things, kind of the fixings to go with it. I wonder if you can see it from there. So with the rice, I've got my Japanese light pickles, which I did a video on this. I think it was in March, Japanese pickles. So you can take a look at the recipe for that, but it's a really quick one that you can make, a couple days ahead of time. It's really simple. It goes super well with rice. Another thing I like to do with the rice is have some kind of fish. So this is actually little anchovies. Let me show you what it actually looked like. At the Korean grocery store, we found, I don't know if you can see that, but they're dried, tiny little anchovy fish, dried. And so I just cooked it with some soy sauce and some sweetener. Brown sugar or maple syrup works well for that, to make it this kind of caramelized look, and it tastes salty, soy sauce, and sweet. And again, this works really well with rice. Gives a ton more minerals, of course, with just the small fish, but it tastes really, really good with the rice too, a good combination. A fermented traditional food in Japan is this pickled plum. It's called umeboshi. I don't know if you can see that there. This is a commercially made one, so this one has a little bit of a sweeter flavor to it, but it's fermented. It works really well. Again, it's quite sour. It's a little bit salty and quite sour, and goes really well with that rice too. Something that I absolutely love, and I showed this on the dairy-free foods for healthy bones video a few weeks back, but this is fermented soybeans. And you can sort of see that shiny, little bit of a slimy coat on there. This is really, really good mixed in with rice. So normally we just put a little bit of soy sauce in there and a little bit of mustard, and then mustard all over the place. Okay, and then you just kind of mix it up. Then I'll show you what it looks like here. Once you mix it up, it gets really kind of frothy and slimy, extra slimy. You can see that. That's fermented soybeans, and I talked about more in detail about the health benefits of that. One of them being that it's a rare source of vitamin K2, which is really important for healthy bones, strong bones, and making sure the calcium goes to the right place in the body. So the studies have shown that it's the people who eat more fermented soybeans, natto, have lower risk of osteoporotic fractures. It's also really delicious, in my opinion. It goes really well with the rice. All right, let's get some of the mustard off my fingers. Okay. And then I also have a little bit of nori on here, just to show you. Most people are familiar with this. These are just seasoned seaweed nori snacks. So there's just a little bit of like soy sauce type of seasoning on the seaweed, and that's just gives a nice little saltiness. Certainly you don't need to have all of these at once. I just try to have as many as possible because it makes it more fun and more variations. But Foodie Cook is another one that's really a nice seasoning for rice that adds just a little bit more minerals to it. So I don't know if you can see it from there, the bottom of that, but you can see that it has a bunch of different kinds of sesame seeds. There's seaweed in there, a little bit of salt. You do want to try to find one that has all recognizable ingredients, that there's no added preservatives or colors or anything like that. This one has black sesame seeds, white sesame seeds, the shiso leaves, which are dried perilla leaves, sea salt, and nori flakes. So all recognizable types of ingredients that taste really good with the rice. All right, and one of the, as I mentioned, with all of these toppings on the rice, I often do that with quinoa, just cooked quinoa. I wanted to show you a variation on that. All right, of this rice. So all of these you could just eat on top of this or on beside the rice. Oh, I just brought the can of sardines. If I don't have leftover fish from the dinner the night before, or if I don't have this fish, I just use canned salmon or sardines as my side dish to my rice breakfast. It's a nice combination as well. Another way that you can do this is, especially when you don't have fresh rice, I find the texture is a little bit different with leftover rice, and I don't love that texture. So if it's not fresh, sometimes doing this variation can be helpful. It's also a super cozy way of having rice. So I'm going to just get my green tea over there. Okay, I just quickly made some green tea and just put it into here. So you can just make green tea and then actually put the toppings like the pickled plum or the fish. You can actually break off some of the seaweed, put it all on the rice, and then you can actually just put the green tea right over top of the whole thing. And that kind of makes it almost like like you're doing congee or a porridge or something like that, but much easier. You don't have to cook this or anything like that. As long as the rice is warm, add hot green tea on top. It makes it a really nice and cozy, especially in the winter. That feels really good on your stomach to have all of these things in this hot green tea. Again, works well with quinoa. I've done it a lot of times that way too. So that's all of the Japanese things that I wanted to show you there. And let me show you some other options. Okay. Now, of course, my breakfast, as I'm mentioning here, my breakfast changed with the season. During the fall, winter, when it's colder, I like having that tea on my in my rice, and things like soup and leftover foods that I just leftover dinners that I just warm up. I definitely prefer warmer foods, but this time of the year, spring, summer, smoothies are great. Feels good on my digestion. And so I'll show you one of my favorite smoothies right now. So I'll just use my NutriBullet back there. So I'll use this smaller cup. I just got some mustard inside of my sweet potato container, so we'll try to avoid that. But the first thing I'm going to use is sweet potato. I don't know if you can see that. It's already steamed. I steamed it a couple days ago. So it's totally soft. And we'll just put that at the bottom. All right, and then I'm going to put some water in there. Maybe half a cup, something like that. Oh, and then my coconut milk. So this is coconut milk from the can, so it's a bit thicker than the coconut beverage, but I use the coconut beverage too. I just probably wouldn't add water if I use the coconut beverage. The sweet potato already makes it actually pretty thick, so you don't really need to add a lot more to make it thick. But I am going to be adding coconut milk and then some flaxseed. And then some protein powder. I probably do maybe 1.5 to 2 tablespoons of flax seeds. Those flax seeds are ground already. And then I do some protein powder. This particular protein powder is a pea and rice protein combo. And it does have a little bit of a vanilla flavoring, and it does have some sweetener, so it's already flavored. So I don't actually need to add any extra sweet, especially with the sweet potato already adding some of that sweet too. So this kind of tastes like a pumpkin pie, that kind of flavor, or what I think a sweet potato pie would taste like. But I've never had that before. So I'm gonna get that. That looks about right. Okay. So I'll just whip that up. When I was 16, I was in a musical called Oklahoma. I don't know if you've seen that version of the one with the Japanese chorus girl. But in that musical, there's a scene where the box social, which is like a dance or a town social, where everybody's talking about sweet potato pie. So ever since that time, I've always wanted to try sweet potato pie, but I have not yet So if you have a good recipe for me, let me know. But I think this smoothie tastes like what I think a sweet potato pie would taste like. It has a nice kind of a orangey color. I prefer doing a smoothie bowl so that I could just use a spoon to have it and eat it, but also so that I can put a bunch of toppings on it, so that there's some variation in the textures. I think that helps just make smoothies more fun, so it's not always, doesn't seem boring that you're having smoothie every day, because you can change it up. So you can do like a little bit of, I wonder if you can see that, I'll hold it up in a second, a little bit of toasted coconut, for example, or a little bit of blueberries. Yeah, blueberries. If they're fresh, I definitely prefer to have blueberries fresh, but I almost always have frozen blueberries in the freezer as well, because they make such good smoothies. And this is macadamia nut butter. I don't know if you're familiar with that. This is one of my favorite foods in the whole world. It is so good. And it's just macadamia nuts raw, blended. That's it. But it's so delicious, and it's a nice low histamine nut butter that tastes really good. That gives a nice texture. It's soft but a little bit crunchy, if that makes any sense. Hopefully you can see that. Okay. So there's blueberries, coconuts, toasted coconuts, and then there's that macadamia nut butter on the side there, on top of the smoothie. So that's one of my favorite smoothie bowls right now. So sweet potato, coconut milk, or a combination of coconut cream and water, ground flax seeds, your choice of protein powder. You can add some sweetener if you need it, but most protein powders have some kind of flavor with it. Sometimes I add vanilla, but my protein powder today does have vanilla flavoring in it already, so I don't need that. And then blend it all up, and then just topped with some berries, macadamia nut butter, and toasted coconut. Yum, that looks so good. Okay. So one of the last things that I wanted to share with you was, I don't know if I would call this a breakfast, but I wanted to share it just because this time right now with schedules might be a little bit changing a little bit here and there, and you might need some backup snacks that are not going to be too hard on your blood sugar, or backup breakfasts if you're on the go. So I wanted to show you a snack here. So these are called keto bombs or fat bombs. Maybe you've heard of that. I made mine last night, and I just used one of those meal prep plastic containers. I actually used the lid for it because it's nice and flat. And I'll just show you what it looks like, and then I can tell you what all the ingredients are. So I just used the lid. I poured it all in here and then froze it in the lid, and I kind of marbled it just to be super fancy, but you definitely don't need to do that. What this is mostly coconut oil and a nut butter mixed together. That's the bulk of it. There's also, as you can see with mine, I've swirled in some cacao, and then a little bit of sweetener. So I've used maple syrup, about 1 teaspoon for this whole thing, and then some monk fruit extract drops. And that's for the sweetener in there. I'm trying to remember if I put vanilla in this time, but I often do put a little bit of vanilla in here too, and a pinch of salt. But those are all sort of extra things you can do. Really, the bulk of this is coconut oil and a nut butter. I'm using peanut butter today. I've used almond butter, works really well too. And then you can just mix in cacao powder and some kind of sweetener, and preferably a sweetener that's not too hard on your blood sugar. So stevia or monk fruit extract are good options for that. Let me show you what that looks like. So it's kind of like a bark. So it's frozen. That's why it's kind of solid like this right now. And I'm just going to break it up a little bit so that we can see the inside. Sometimes I put walnuts chopped up inside of it or on top of it. Something crunchy definitely is nice texture in there. This one is crunchy peanut butter, so there is a little bit of the crunch from that. You can also put cayenne pepper in there too, and that kind of jazzes it up a little bit. Cayenne pepper and cacao, I think is a good combination. I will definitely put the list of all the ingredients in the summary notes. So you can see, maybe you can't see from that piece, some of the nuts. So there's a cross section if you can see that. So in this case, I just mix a little piece, a little part of the coconut oil and nut butter combination with the cacao, and so I marbled it in. But most of the time I just put the cacao in, and so the whole thing is brown. But just for variation and just to make it pretty. So that's kind of like a bark that you can just have a piece when you're on the go. And it makes a really nice snack, or when you're trying to cut down sugar and things like that. It's nice to just have a backup that isn't going to make your blood sugar go too far up. This one has a lot of healthy fats in it, and the maple syrup, I probably use 1 teaspoon in this whole batch here for about this much. So that would be about 4 or 5 grams of sugar in all of this. So if you're having like 1 piece as a snack, maybe it's half a gram of sugar. If you're using that maple syrup with a combination of stevia or monk fruit extract or something like that. So it's kind of a nice option to just as a backup if you're on the go and you haven't had anything and you just need to have something before you go. With all of the healthy fats in there, you do feel a little bit fuller, and it just helps to not grab something that's high carbs or high sugar, like a muffin or something like that. So it gives you an option, and this is something that you can make ahead of time and then just keep it in the freezer like this, and just have it whenever you need it. Everybody loves it as well. It tastes really, really good, and you can make all different kinds of variations, but you do generally want to keep it in the freezer. All right. So that's all of the different kinds of breakfasts that I wanted to share with you today. A couple variations on a Japanese sort of a breakfast with the rice and the fish and pickles. All of these things, again, are mostly prepared beforehand. So the only thing that maybe you would be thinking about doing in the morning is cooking the rice. But of course, you can heat that up too. All the pickles and all of these things are things that can be pre-prepared. And then you can, of course, I like doing all of these things with quinoa as well. I think it tastes really good. You can add that green tea as we did right on top of the rice with everything else, with the pickles. That tastes really good. And then with smoothies, of course, there's tons of different kinds of smoothies that you can make. But the sweet potato and coconut milk combo I'm really loving right now. And the macadamia nut sort of as a topping with coconut, shredded coconut, or blueberries is really nice, as there's more and more of these fresh fruit coming out right now. So that's one of my favorite combinations right now. And then I mentioned, of course, the fat bombs or the keto bombs. You'll see lots of different ideas about that, but that's a nice little snack that's got lots of healthy fats with very little sugar. And that might be something that you could use kind of as your backup breakfast if you're on the go and kind of on the run and you need to just grab something small. That might be a good option for you. I would love to hear what you're having for breakfast these days. I hope that gives you a few ideas that you can sort of expand your breakfast. It does not have to be all cereal and eggs and fruit. You can do a lot of different things. And of course, you can certainly have a lunch or a dinner type of meal for breakfast too. Thanks for joining me today. I hope to see you again very soon. Have a fantastic day. And of course, share this with anyone that you think could use this information. All right. Thanks. Have a good day. Bye.